Past 10. Now, we're hearing all the time how disrupted the modern classroom is. Kids, we're being told, can be quite disruptive, and some behaviours make some of our classrooms downright unsafe. So, is the answer stricter discipline? Things like uniform codes, orderly lines, children only speaking when they're spoken to? Not altogether Dickensian, but certainly borrowing a lot from the past. Following on from strong evidence of success in the UK, Australian students will apparently be taught old school discipline, including how to line up, to keep quiet, and to be still, in a bid to rid classrooms of the behaviour crisis that sees teachers routinely abused, attacked, and children disrupted. Dr. David Roy is an education researcher and practitioner from the University of Newcastle, has been good enough to join us to reflect on this today. Hi, David.
Hi, Paul. Great to be here.
Does discipline work? Does it make our classrooms more orderly?
Yes. I know this seems going to be a bit strange coming from someone from a university who apparently just wants everything to happen anyway. But yes, discipline has always been part of the school classroom, and rules for kids to both learn so they can become better members of society, and also for the classroom to work. However, it's not quite as simple as the three-word slogan of back to basics that we've been hearing over the past 24 hours.
Yeah. Kids are just doing at school what they're doing at home, aren't they?
Yeah. There's an aspect to that. I remember my childhood in school. I was not, shall we say, one of the children who would get a gold star for behaviour from the school. We want to rebel against authority. So when we create authoritarian structures, kids will try to challenge that, whether it's the length of your skirt or how you wear your tie. However, some things like uniform are important. Having kids line up in a nice calm way for entering the classroom from the boisterousness of travelling through the corridors or at recess or lunchtime are important. But if we become authoritarian, where as soon as you disobey with any of these rules, you get punished severely, that can have some quite negative effects of learning in the classroom. So we've got to find a balance for different kinds of kids because they're not an homogenous group.
So what happened? Did we go all hippie and, all the classrooms are loving? Did we go too far with the laissez-faire approach?
No, I don't think we did. I think we've always had challenges with behaviour in classrooms. And we used to think we could solve it by beating children. And I'm of an age where I was hit with various sticks and bits of leather and chalk dusters when I was younger. And that didn't work. What really does work for kids are having clear guidelines that are applied across the board. Now, that doesn't mean they need to be Dickensian, as you said, but schools need to have consistency. And we do find that when a new principal comes into school and creates standardization for how we're meant to be in that school and creates a great ethos, as we've seen at Cessnock High, then you can have a change in behaviour challenges, which will eventually lead to better learning outcomes for all in the classroom. So there's a place for discipline, there's a place for rules, but there's also a place for flexibility because there's a lot going on in kids' lives and schools can't answer it all because there is stuff going on at home as well.
David, is this just another swing of the pendulum? It goes too far one way and then we flick back the other way. And we've seen, as I mentioned, some success in the UK from these stricter approaches. But what's the lesson that's coming out of that?
Well, one of the lessons we're learning is that parents who send their schools to those, shall we say, stricter schools, they're making a choice. They are parents who are engaged in the education system and they want that kind of atmosphere for their children. So they're probably also doing something similar at home to support it. And I guess that's where it comes in. We have parents who support whatever the school is doing, whether it be extremely strict or whether it has an element of flexibility. What we do find is that when kids feel that they are wanted in the school, that they are respected, and the teacher is friendly, but not necessarily their friend, because there's a big difference. So there's still that aspect of the adult with the child. Then you actually have a really good learning system. One of the things that we've known for the past 12, 15 years from the quality teaching framework is that having high expectations in a classroom, having social support in a classroom leads for children wanting to be there, wanting to be engaged. But if you put them into rows and you have kids at the back, they're going to learn less. If we go back to that old structure of the teacher as the performer at the front, then you're not going to have a successful learning process for most kids. And many kids will switch off, and we'll get back to the stage of the old days, of the good old back to basic days, when kids left school at the age of 15 illiterate, and we actually had a diminished society.
David, the other issue is that our classrooms are so organic, aren't they? I mean, there are a lot of positive outcomes that can come from a well-run classroom. You've got the social advantages, the academic advantages, of course, and heightened career prospects at the back end of all of that, if you're lucky. But there's and that a lot of that would be nuanced, wouldn't it? It would come down to the dynamic between the teacher and the classroom. It would be a very, very organic thing, I would imagine.
Absolutely. Some of the best classrooms that you go to with no discipline issues or limited discipline issues are ones where the teacher is flexible and is not just teaching from a script, which is kind of being promoted in some schools just now as well, but actually brings their personality, their passions, and brings the kids forward in a sense of engagement, because they can see the teacher actually knows their information and cares about it. The big issue that's not being talked in this back to basics approach is staffing. If you have a school that's missing staff, and so maybe a math teacher is not there and you've got a geography teacher teaching maths, then you're going to have challenges because the kids know the teacher isn't fully on the subject. So we need to actually solve the teaching shortage. And that's whether it's through the graduate diploma here at the University of Newcastle, or getting better working conditions for staff, getting smaller class sizes, and giving staff time to not necessarily be in the classroom, but to prepare for it and engage with the kids in the playground and on duties. So take that workload of teachers, you might actually, and have more teachers, you might have better outcomes in the classroom.
But the message here is that our schools don't have the sole responsibility of making our kids polite and well behaved, do they?
No, it's a societal thing. And I'm going to link it back to the main topic that's been on a lot of the radio today in Newcastle, is about the violence towards women. We have a society which accepts violence amongst adults. And we need to challenge that, because if kids see that violence or aggression or reacting against authority is acceptable by adults to adults, then they're going to reflect that in their microcosm of the school. So we've got to look for solutions and say it's a whole society thing. Schools got their part to play. Teachers do an amazing job trying to get kids ready for a wider society. But we've got to look at all the issues as well, whether it be the violence of poverty, whether it be the violence within genders. We've got to actually start being maybe a nicer society if we want our kids reflecting that niceness.
David Roy, I appreciate your reflections. Thanks so much.
Anytime, Paul.
Dr. David Roy from the School of Education at the University of Newcastle. You may have some views as well. 0487991233.